Oh, jeez. Well, hey, should we get into this or? Okay. Well, I'm going to push record. And I have this feeling we don't need any real pomp and ceremony to kicking off these episodes. But today we have Ed back. Ed, it's been a while since you've been on the podcast.
2 years.
Solo. Well, you and I together.
Never.
Is it you and I or you and me?
You and I.
You and I
Yeah.
have been. We were on this.
You and me?
Couple years.
It's like, where'd you get your education?
No, but there is times when you think when it is me, when you think it might be I, and it actually is me.
Well, maybe the school that you went to in some barn in Pickering, but like other than...
I think it's something to do with if you were by yourself. I don't know. There's a trick to it I learned, and I forgot what it was, but it is not always like you and I. It is sometimes it is a me. It's me when you think it's I when it's not. So the English majors. I think we're both English majors, aren't we?
Yeah, we both have the same degree. English.
We don't know. This seems like fairly basic English majory type stuff to know.
I've never paid any attention to grammar.
Okay, well, anyway, you're back. You're back, and I got to thank you for kind of answering in my hour of need, because I just had this feeling this morning, like I really want to record an episode today. So thank you for that.
Oh, okay.
And we sort of bounced around a few topics that we wanted to go over, and we talked, well, before we pushed record, we were talking about the Thanksgiving thing, but you probably think that would be too boring to share with the audience.
The fact that I think most people are giving up on the turkey.
Yeah, we had chicken yesterday.
Too much.
Yeah. And now, so did you? Oh, so you went to Mark's for
Mark's, and we just had a turkey breast.
Okay. So
and it was still, a plate of food.
Now you say people have given up on it. Is
a lot of people basically are doing alternates to turkey because a lot of people don't digest turkey very well. It's well known that turkey is hard on the stomach. And, that's why people tend to sort of pass out on the couch after a big meal, it's because
it's not all the alcohol they drank.
Well, that could be, but it's their digestive juices operating overtime.
Oh, speaking of which, have you ever been a Guinness fan?
No, and that came up. Was that with you?
Being a Guinness fan?
It's like drinking molasses, for Christ's sakes.
Oh, I don't think you've drank it.
Yes, I have.
Because it's not like drinking molasses. Ugh, it's black. It's dark, but... Anyway, I wanted to tell you because there's a Guinness Zero just came out.
Yeah, there's a lot of zeros coming out, actually. The one that I had just recently was that with you?
Oh, the Peroni.
The Peroni. Well, that's the best one I've ever tasted.
Yeah, it's on the mass-produced, like, the big names. That's my favorite as well.
Yeah, I agree. That's one that I was actually at the walking home from an appointment, and I walked through the film festival, and everything was kind of like shut down, but if you were just a pedestrian you could kind of walk through it, and there were these people just handing them out in the streets. So I cracked mine open just as I'm walking down Richmond Street, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, someone's going to drive by and see me walking down the street swilling a can of beer. But it was good.
Yeah, I agree. But Guinness Zero, I had it for the first time yesterday. My dad and my brother-in-law actually picked some up for me because it's hard to find. It's not in a lot of the LCBOs. So anyway, I tried it, and I have to say, it is as close, I think, as you can get to the real thing.
Well, that's not actually a selling point for me, but, because I don't like the beer to begin with. But as long as they've got the Corona and the Peroni, I'm happy.
Okay. Well, yeah, Corona's my second favorite. Mm-hmm. Guinness is up there, but Guinness is a different type of beer. But wait, you said that's not a selling point to you, that it tastes.
I don't like the original Guinness. It's too heavy of a beer.
But for regular beer, I mean, if it tasted like a real Peroni, then that's a good thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are some that are very successful, like the Heineken is terrible.
I'm not a big fan, and unfortunately it's the one that's in all of the restaurants typically.
Yeah. The other one that I'm just trying to think of right now.
There's Beck's.
Beck's, not very good. There's one that's pretty good, and it's just gone right out of my head.
It's not the Partake one, is it?
No, those are gross. I don't know what they're thinking with that.
They're like soda with a bit of a beer taste to them. Although I will say in a pinch, they're not. Like, I will drink those, but I think the one that I can't really drink or don't enjoy that much is the Beck's non-alcohol.
Yeah, Beck's and the Heineken are poor. Budweiser is another one that's not bad.
I also find drinking
But
it out of the bottle versus pouring it into a glass or a can can also give it more of an authentic
oh yeah, because it
taste.
airs it out totally. You know that in my local, like I have a fairly sizable metro, and at one point I had said something to the store manager. I said, your selection of non-alcoholic beers is so poor, and then I actually learned something that I did not know. He goes, well, we don't actually Metro the actual store, or any store, any grocery store, actually don't allocate the product where it's going to be in the store and how much of it is.
You mean
All
like
of the
where it's
shelves
placed in the store?
placed and amount.
Okay.
And he says all of the stores, their shelf space is sold. It's like rented to different manufacturers. So, for example, Coke will always have a large display. You'll notice that. It'll be multiple of one product, and then and he goes, I just simply don't have the space to offer to independents, like something like that. He goes, because the large brands basically buy up all the space,
Right.
which I didn't know.
Huh. No, I didn't either.
And I don't think a lot of people know that either, that that's the way the grocery business runs. And it probably a lot of other retail as well.
Hey, we didn't really say it at the beginning, but in case somebody is listening and they've heard Paul on quite a few episodes, they've heard Salim and Justin and Teresa. You were on a while back, but maybe we should just give like a little quick, like, how do we know each other?
Okay. Do you want me to do it? Or
I
do you
think
want
you
to
should do it. Yeah.
Well, Clark and I met, 1995. So how many years ago is that?
Almost 30.
Yeah, almost 30 years ago, doing extra work for the Canadian Opera Company. And the production that we were both working on was Wagner's The Flying Dutchman.
Mm-hmm.
And we became friends. It was a large cast, like singer-wise, but then there were a lot of extras. But we became friends very, very fast.
Yeah.
And you were just completing your degree at that time. And we both had an interest in theater and just continued to do extra work together for the opera company. Then we started acting together, like in legitimate, like actually speaking and singing.
Yeah.
Initially in musical theater.
Yeah, because the work we did with the opera was not singing; it was just
you
your
just stand there
background
wearing,
people, extras.
you stand there wearing a costume. And then we did some musical theater. Then we both joined a repertory theater company at that one point, and I stayed 11 years, and I think you stayed until you had your first kid, and then you weren't able to do it anymore because,
it became hard to be at practices all day on Sunday, and usually 1, maybe 2 nights a week. Yeah, it was a lot.
And unfortunately, we haven't done a production together, a theater production, in a long time. And it would be nice to do one again.
We should. I think I'm pretty close to, now that my kids are older, they're 14 and 12 as opposed to toddlers, it's probably a little more possible for me to be involved in a theater production. However, I do have a few other interests that are going, like my PA work for the Panthers. And so anyway, you finish up. So that's how we met, right?
That's how we met.
Yeah. And it'll be 30 years, I guess, in 2025.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow.
So, all right. Well, look, we did have a few things we wanted to talk about. One of the things I wanted to ask you about that I came across recently was silent retreats. And these things they vary. They can be 5, 7, 10 days. I guess they could be even longer. They're retreats where you go away, and sometimes it's to an exotic location in the middle of the Amazon or Thailand or somewhere, and you take a vow of silence quite often. And you just sometimes I guess there's always other people there, but you're not supposed to talk to them. So you coexist among, I don't know, 10, 12 other people for a period of time. And one of the things you can't do is talk, and you can't communicate. Obviously, the rest of the world is shut off. And I just wondered, could you handle a retreat like that, a silent retreat? And is there anything? Well, let me just ask you: could you handle something like that?
It would depend on the length.
Let's say 5 days.
Okay, that's a lot of time, long time to not speak. It might be, who knows, because unless you've actually done one, you don't know how it feels first. It would be, for me, where it would be if it was a really beautiful location, like, some gorgeous place in, California. Like California has a lot of these retreats.
Thailand.
Yeah, I think maybe that
India,
would help.
probably.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, but, as long as there was something to look at and everything. I also think it would be difficult depending on who the people were. I mean, if they were just like regular people that might actually be interesting to talk to, it might be a little bit harder. But if it was populated with like a bunch of swaggering boors, it'd probably be really easy, right? Because you think, thank God that they can't open their mouths,
Right.
right? So yeah, I don't know if it was me. I don't know if it would be my thing. I know people who have done them. One person in particular comes to mind because she made a bunch of comments on her Facebook that she was doing this retreat and silent retreat. Yeah, I don't think it would be my thing. I'm a social person. I like to talk and I like to hear what people have to say. But then at the other hand, it might be nice just to, because you're also silent with yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
I live alone. Okay, I got a cat, so it's not like I'm silent when I'm home, because I'm not. Like, I mean, I talk to my cat, I talk to myself, and I mean, and that's not, I'm not ashamed to say that. Like, I mean, I live alone. So if I've got something that's happening like I'm cooking or something, I'm like, I do actually will say things,
Like,
and I
smell that
definitely,
kitty cat?
oh yeah, yeah. Well, I definitely talk to my cat.
And who else would you talk to?
Well, if I was alone,
Yeah.
the wall, who else?
Okay, so you just sort of
Like,
say stuff out loud, but you're not thinking about a specific person.
no,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Although, that I know people do talk to people that are not there. Like, for example, people talk to people that have died to ask them for guidance and things like that. I know people talk to gravestones. I've certainly done it.
Yeah.
I've gone and talked to my parents' gravestone. Just because I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I mean, I guess it's just because it's just not part of my life, being quiet very much.
Yeah. You are, extroverted. Is that the right way to describe you?
Chatty Cathy doll. That's really, I think that I'm sure you're going to get complaints about that, because that whole concept and that doll have really fallen out of, like, it's fallen out of favor. Like, I don't even think you can get the Chatty Cathy doll anymore.
Really?
Because of the things that she would say.
Like what?
Like, oh, I don't need to go to school because I'm pretty. I know that's a parody, because The Simpsons did a famous parody of the Chatty Cathy doll.
Okay.
But I still think that it's not a product that's really out there anymore.
I know the Chatty Cathy doll just because it's referenced in one of my favorite movies, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh yeah, which I've never seen, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Walk, as you used to say, walk, don't run to your nearest
No, it's
streaming.
No, why would you walk? It's run, don't walk.
True, yeah. Run, don't walk to your nearest, today we call it streaming service. You used to call it video store, and pick up a copy of Planes, Trains, Automobiles, because it's a great movie.
Yeah, what's his face is in it?
John Candy and Steve Martin.
Candy, yeah. Yeah, it's never happened.
You got to see it. And I mean, I introduced you to A Christmas Story as well.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't go completely off the rails like you and Murawski, or is it you and Smith? One of the two.
Mike and I
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. Now, they made the sequel, right?
Yeah, it was a summer one though, wasn't it? Or no, they just came out with a second one recently. Or was it a remake?
Yeah,
no, it was with the guy, and he's now the dad.
It's a sequel. Yeah, he's the dad. I didn't see it, so
I haven't seen it. I partially don't want to ruin it. I'm one of those people who has trouble. If I have a really distinct memory of something, like from my childhood, I really hesitate to mess it up by watching some remake of it or prequel or whatever, because in almost every single case, it's disappointed me.
It's always disappointing. The only time that I've seen a remake like that, I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. I'm just going to evaluate it as a film on its own and not say that it's better or worse than the original, was the remake of West Side Story. I thought I really, really had no interest in seeing it. Mark rented it. We watched it. And I thought, as a movie on its own, it completely stood up. Like, See,
I would put that in that. I mean, there's an example of a movie from the 50s? 60s? Where it's very distinct in its style. Natalie Wood, I think, in it, right? Mm-hmm. Is it Natalie Wood?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So a lot of tradition in there. The style, the time of the thing was produced, that made it kind of the way it was.
Choreography.
Yeah, and then of course the political climate, even with and was at the time, was it set in current day?
I believe so. I think, well, the original musical, which was changed, I believe, slightly for the movie, was set in New York. It was the 50s, I think, when the musical came out. And, there was like the racial tension, which is, of course, sort of the crux of the whole movie.
Right.
And then it's kind of well, it is not kind of, it's a Romeo and Juliet story, obviously. And, but that movie is about as perfect of a movie that you can imagine coming out of Hollywood. And there were a lot of people who will disagree, probably Natalie Wood at the top of the list, and she's not here to defend herself because apparently she was pissed off because, she was told that she would be able to do her own singing. And it was very, very common back then that singers were dubbed. That would not happen now. And I think that was something that bugged her about that film for the
she was
rest of her
dubbed,
life.
right?
She was dubbed, and the Tony was dubbed as well.
Yeah. One thing I struggle with movie musicals.
And what's her face? Rita Moreno was dubbed as well.
Huh.
So, but that was not uncommon. Like Audrey Hepburn was dubbed in, My Fair Lady. It was just not expected that actors would have to do both.
So Rita Moreno is in the new movie.
She is. They wrote a role for her.
Interesting, because
she's not in the. It's the role was like made up for the second film.
Because if
it replaces the drugstore guy.
I always struggle with movie musicals because I don't like the way the sound is. And then you said sometimes they dub the people, but as well, I don't like looking at the TV and hearing a consistent sound. I want to hear it like the way, like with a movie musical, it feels like I'm listening to a soundtrack.
Well, you are.
Versus hearing the people on the screen singing.
Because the soundtrack would have been laid out either sometimes before or after.
I don't like that.
They would not be jumping around basically in downtown Manhattan doing Jerome Robinson's choreography and singing.
I want them to be, because that's more realistic.
Well, yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, because certainly when it's on the stage, that's what would have happened.
Yeah.
But to take that, if those 50s and 60s musicals, thank God Mark's not here because he'd have something to say. Back then, they didn't have they had dancing chorus and singing chorus. And if you were a dancer, you didn't sing. And if you were a singer, you didn't dance.
Right.
And that doesn't exist anymore. That's purely a matter of, economics in terms of having a chorus. You got to pay all those people, right?
So I didn't think we were going to talk about West Side Story. What started this? Why did we get into that? Remakes. Remakes. And my feeling of not wanting to ruin. And I actually talked about this on a podcast episode 3 episodes ago with my friend Brian. We talked about what's the movie you want to see remade and what's the one that you fear will be remade and not be very good.
Well, I can tell you what my worry is, and I've heard over the years that it's been in development and then it goes away and then it comes back, is Wizard of Oz. I just think that would just be asinine. I mean, it was good that they did like sequels, which were interesting, and prequels like Wicked is a prequel, right?
I think done right, I think they could do it. I think it could be pulled off.
Absolutely not.
Why not?
That is so iconic. That's like just saying, why don't you repaint the Mona Lisa? Forget it. No. Leave it alone.
I would put Gone with the Wind more in that category than Wizard of Oz.
I'd heard that was another one that they were considering too, or was under development as well. But yeah, those classic, Hollywood heyday films, just leave them alone. Come on.
Isn't it weird?
Come up with your own ideas.
Isn't it kind of creepy? We talked about this, I think yesterday. We were talking about how you look at people in pictures and you ask, like, I wonder if they're still alive. Like, even sometimes like a background person in a photo that isn't even with your party, that you just wonder, I wonder if those people are still alive. I do that with movies like The Wizard of Oz, which by now, I guess, there wouldn't be any survivors of that, would there?
I think the last one just died.
Because that movie, what's so bizarre is that's 1939.
39.
That's a long time ago.
Last Munchkin, the last known actor, I think, just died.
Marin.
Recently.
What's his name? Jerry Marin.
That's
died
right.
in 2018. He was 98.
And who did he play, the mayor?
He played the original... who was he? He was a Munchkin member, but he might not have had a specific, like...
Oh, I thought he did.
He's the last surviving cast member with a specifically identified speaking or singing role.
Yeah, I do myself. I love that kind of stuff. Like, do you know It's a Wonderful Life, which is around the same era? It's a little later.
Yeah.
There is one surviving cast member, and she goes around and does conventions and stuff like that, and promotes the film to like the new generation.
Mm-hmm.
And she's one of the daughters, but she's the last one. But yeah, no, I do think about that death thing a lot when it comes to entertainment industry. For example, like on my beloved Carol Burnett show, only the two women are alive.
Carol Burnett?
The men are, yeah, well, she's alive, and Vicki Lawrence, and the men are all dead.
How old's Carol Burnett?
She just had her 90th birthday. It was an international event. Do you not watch TV?
I don't have cable.
Oh, okay.
Do you?
Yeah, no, no.
But how did you watch it?
On streaming.
Just looking at all those gossip magazines that you buy?
I don't actually, you know what? The one magazine that I subscribe to is going tits up at the end of the year.
Is it an opera magazine?
What's the opera magazine? It's called Opera News, and it's folding.
In print or in general?
Print and online. It had both. It's being absorbed into a British magazine,
Yeah.
But it won't have the same impact, I don't think.
Is it a British magazine?
Now it will be after December 2023.
But the one you watched,
no, it's American.
Because I looked it up. Here it says Opera is a monthly British magazine.
That's the one that's absorbing Opera News.
Oh, I see. Oh, Opera News. Okay.
Yeah. Opera News was originally tied hugely closely to the Metropolitan Opera, but it isn't as much anymore. Yeah, that's a real shame. But I think the magazine industry, let's face it, it's dead.
There's still something about the
getting
idea,
a glossy,
yes, nice.
in the mail that shows up. I mean, I used to
getting your face off screens too. There's something really nice about that.
Well, there might be a huge in our lifetime. There might be a huge backlash, and things might go back. Who knows? But I used to love getting the magazines I subscribed to. You come home from work, and it'd be in your mailbox, and it'd be like Canadian House and Home. That was one that I did. It's still around. But I think of a number of the ones that I used to subscribe to that I just kind of stopped. I don't know. It was expensive. I thought I subscribed to too many magazines. And then you don't renew. And yeah.
Were your parents a National Geographic?
Yes, they were. That's actually funny that you should ask that. That was the one magazine they subscribed to that I can recall. And only one newspaper.
Which was?
Toronto Star. Back then, basically, you subscribed to either the Star or what was the other one called?
There was the Telegram or something?
Telegram.
What about Globe and Mail? Is that recent?
I don't remember when Globe and Mail came in or if it actually was always there. I'd have to look it up.
Since 1936. Yeah.
Yeah. No, never. Toronto Star, CFRB. That was what my parents listened to and read. And then CBC and then all of that stuff.
Was there something, we talk about parents for a sec here, is there a fond memory that you have of your house when you were 9 years old? Maybe it was the National Geographic collection on the shelf. Maybe it was something. Is there anything that comes to mind that you sort of get a little bit of a nostalgic tingle when you think about your home?
I think for me, it would be more of the cottage than the house. Wasn't very fond of where I grew up, the house.
That was like above the store, right?
Well, above and back. There was an addition on the back that was built after I was born. I don't know. It was, in retrospect, there's nothing wrong with the house. It, had a very expansive basement where I could play and do all sorts of stuff. But no, I would say I would have more fond memories of the family cottage.
Yeah, I'm just thinking myself. What's funny is that both my childhood homes came up for sale within the last couple of years. Like my house in Whitby, where I grew up, came up for sale. I don't know. It was still COVID times, maybe 3 years ago. And my sister and I and our friend, who's a real estate agent, she's the one who I guess gave us the heads up. Hey, your old family home's for sale. We went down there, and it was actually quite interesting touring a place I hadn't been in like 30 years.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I was in one of
More
them,
than
the
that,
one that
40
was,
years actually.
yeah,
Because
I
I
was
left
in
there
the one in
when I was 10. So it was
Pickering.
like almost 40 years later. And it was Whitby. And they done a lot to the place. They made an
Uh-huh.
open concept kitchen and living room area, so that was quite a bit different. But it was weird because one of the things I remember doing was just staring out the window of the front window and thinking about that was the view I would have had for, as long as I was able to be conscious of things I was seeing, like babies don't really know what they're looking at. And I just looked across the street at the house there and I thought, yeah, there's a view that my eyes as a 8-year-old, 9-year-old would have been looking out at. Even though, and it hasn't changed that much. It's a residential area, so it's not like they tore a building down and put a bunch of stuff up. So that was kind of interesting for me. And obviously seeing my bedroom and that sort of thing. Everything was different. Nothing, we didn't see too much that was there from the original house. But
The house I grew up in, well, I've seen it definitely on Google Maps, and then I've cycled by it a couple of times. The neighborhood hasn't changed almost at all, and the only thing that I can say is the actual house. It looks just like something out of like a bombed out. You know, that's because my stupid brother hasn't put 1 cent into it since my parents died, and it's incredible. Like it's just, oh my God, it's just so ugly and it's just so badly maintained. And I just think my dad, who was the most meticulous person I have ever met, because he was a tool and die maker,
yeah,
he was very neat. And the house always outside was always beautifully painted, and you had to like go out and sweep the sidewalk and stuff like that. And I mean, he'd die if he saw it now.
again, talking about parents, do you ever find yourself feeling like one of your parents in terms of how you're reacting to something or
Yes,
behaving?
and I try very hard not to. I can resemble my mother a little bit too much, who was overreactive, and I can pick it up when I see it. I can say, "Oh, okay, you're pulling a Lillian," so just wrap it up.
Well, good
Unfortunately,
for
I
you
do
for
not.
recognizing it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I do not have too many traits of my father. I wish I did. He was first off, he was really very talented in the sense that he had a very, very difficult job and he did it really, really well. He could fix anything. He could build anything. He wasn't necessarily a talkative man. He could have a sense of humor, not really. But what I admired about him the most was the fact that if it needed fixing, he could do it.
Yeah.
And how much I regret that he was just a little bit too old to ever get interested in computers.
Well, because there's a big gap between you. You were how
Yeah.
old
Oh,
when he
yeah.
was when you?
Well, my mother had me late. Okay, so my mother had me at 45. Okay, and in the 60s, so that was kind of a big deal. But and computers started to become out there late 80s, 90s. When everybody really had one, and by the time that I had my own home computer and things like that, I wasn't living at home anymore. So it wasn't like I could say, Dad, try this or look at this, or because I know that if I had gotten him interested into it, he would have really embraced it. But so neither of my parents were technologically advanced in that way.
So what is the Lillian thing that you do that you catch yourself?
Overreacting is probably the biggest one. Slightly less so than I used to be, a little bit of a hypochondriac. Then there's a lot of dissimilar traits as well, too. Like, I mean, my mother was obsessed with saving money. And that was basically because my father, not so much. My father, apparently, before he married my mother, was a huge spender. Big.
What would he
was in
buy?
debt when that's a whole podcast episode.
Okay.
He bought a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have. But basically, I guess everyone's dead now, so it doesn't matter. My father had a child out of wedlock, which I just found out about 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay,
the child was born in 1948. My parents were married in 1951, but my parents were dating for 7 years prior to being married. So my father had this affair during the time that him and my mother were dating. And after most of the family had died. My aunt, who is still alive, she told me once about this child and the fact that my father had arranged for him and the mother to relocate back to the East Coast from where she was, and bought her a house. And so when my parents got married, my father was $3,000 in debt. And that was 1951, and that's an astronomical amount of money.
Yeah.
And my mother used to always say that they had it paid off in 1 year because of her, and I believe that because she was so
Now,
cheap.
did she know about the child out of wedlock?
No,
Okay.
no. And neither does my brother, and I hope he hears this because he'd be hearing it for the first time.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm so pleased that I know something about my dad that he doesn't know.
So a lot of people worry about this podcast revealing something people shouldn't know about.
I think that's I think that's a great story. When I heard it, I was just shocked, and then I was thinking, is there a way to find this guy?
Oh wait,
I never
not
really
your brother
pursued
though.
Who?
Find who?
Find the half brother.
Yeah, but you would want your regular brother to find out.
Well, in a nasty way, yes.
Okay. Yes, because I know you have some history which we won't get into with your brother. Okay. So, by the way, I looked it up. $3,000 in 1951 is the equivalent of $35,000 today.
Yeah, and that's about what you could buy a house for. Although, for example, the house that I own now that my parents bequeathed to me, they bought it in 1969 for $9,000.
Yeah, $35,000 for a house wouldn't be that much back then. But at the same time, there's a good example of how you see your dollar does not go the same, right? Like $3,000, $35,000 would not buy you a house. So actually, I know my neighborhood houses went for about $17,000 in the early 60s. So if I just change that, I love the fact you can do this. This is, oops, I messed that up. In start year 1961, a $17,000 house would be worth 175. That would be what would it be in today's dollars, but that does not at all. You can't buy a house for $174,000 in this area.
Buy a broom closet for $175,000.
No.
But yeah, so my I didn't inherit my mother's frugal nature with money. I'm just trying to think of something that I inherited it from her that I like. Well, she liked to dance.
Do you?
Not in public.
Just you and your cat.
Well, I don't dance with my cat. But yeah, no. She was a very, it's so interesting about parents. And I've had a really interesting conversation with your mother about, I've had many interesting conversations, but just about that your mother was much younger, obviously, than my mother. But, generation of women, and certainly my mother was the beginning of the feminist movement, sort of, not quite, but, she had a fabulous job, which she had to step down from when she got married. That's just exactly what you did. Mm-hmm. Unless you were like what they would call a spinster, that you would work after, you'd have to work because you had to support yourself. I just think that there were a lot of women, and my mother certainly was one of them, that was extremely bitter about the fact that they didn't have a career, they didn't have a professional life. And I do know that my mother looked on the feminist movement of the 60s and 70s, and she was really, really envious of it. But also very, very critical.
My mom's pretty critical of it.
Yeah.
Just this.
I've talked to your mom about that.
Just feeling like things were a little more solid or balanced. That almost sounds like a oxymoron, but.
Well, yeah, I guess your dad and your mom were traditional in the sense that your dad went to work, and she was a homemaker. He got on the GO train, came to the city, worked in an insurance company, got back onto the GO train with a sack of McDonald's.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
We talked about that too. Great memory.
So, and we won't get into it now. We'll share it another time. But, we kind of went all over the place here. I guess I didn't answer what I inherited from my parents. For me, definitely moodiness from my mom.
I've never seen it in you.
Yes, you have. You asked me, remember the thing you do to me? I'll say,
the irritation
what's your
level?
irritation level? And I'll tell you.
But that moodiness is not, what is that child doing? Beat him.
What is it, Eric? Guess you had to grab something.
And cut his hair.
Yeah.
What is he, a hippie?
you and I have this little thing where you'll say to me, like if I pick you up at the train and you're coming over, you'll say irritation level, scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
That
Moodiness is not irritation. Moodiness is basically for no reason becoming, like Jay Gatsby, out of like, and just staring into space and, and with a depressive outlook. No, your issue is that you have this level of you're cranky or and
Okay.
and it's that
Yeah, fair.
and that's where we've put it on a scale. It's true.
Yes.
And we almost always, when we meet, immediately I'll ask you what number, and then I can tell.
Yeah. So sometimes
what the
it's a
evening's
6,
gonna be
and
like.
sometimes it's a 9.
A 9.
And sometimes I'll tell you, oh, it's a 3, and you'll be like, oh, really? Okay. So clearly I'm giving off or emoting something that shows it might be something else and it isn't.
It was a 10 last Christmas.
Where?
I won't give the details, but I'll say it was the funniest way of expressing it. We were meeting up, not going to say why, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to give Clark a call just to make sure we're all on the up and up, we're meeting and blah, blah, blah. And I phoned you and you picked up and I went, okay, blah, blah, we'll see. And he goes, Ed, I'm sitting here in my vehicle and I have half a mind to just close the door, press the gas pedal and drive downtown and meet you. And that'll be that. And I was like, oh, do you remember that?
I thought you were going to say I was going to I was picking you up and you didn't show up or something.
Oh, no. You were sitting in your driveway and there was a situation.
I don't remember that.
Oh, I do.
Around Christmas?
Yes.
All right. Well, I guess we'll take that out of the...
Ask your children.
Huh. Maybe we'll just have... Oh, that was the Nutcracker.
Oh, yeah. I didn't want to say it.
Yeah, we were trying to get everybody out of the house to go downtown to see the Nutcracker. And it was... it's so funny because I don't really remember that. And some people say you don't remember the bad stuff, like that type of stuff. It's kind of true. Like, I remember the Nutcracker being an amazing, awesome family event that we did, but I don't remember that part. You're right, because I remember we were possibly going to be late. I didn't know where we were going to park.
I told you to take the
meet
train.
you or pick you up or figure out how to meet.
No. No, you didn't have to pick me up. I live next door to the friggin' opera house. But
I love the train.
No,
I always preferred taking.
Always
the train.
take the train. But the thing that I liked the most was as soon as we actually met up. I've never seen you do this before. You walked through the gates and you showed your tickets.
Yep.
You looked at me and said, "Get me a drink."
Huh. Yeah. Interesting, because we both don't drink anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which I do want to have an episode about that someday.
It's an interesting topic. Well, I mean, it's kind of a boring topic for people who don't do it, but the bottom line is it's challenging, obviously. But
sometimes people are thinking about doing it.
A lot of people, it's world alcohol consumption in general is dropping.
Is it really?
And, it is. Mm-hmm, absolutely.
But is that across the world, or is that North American, or?
No, it's world. And there's all sorts of studies that people are just not drinking as much as they used to. You just have to look at something like Mad Men, for example, which is a series that I just adore. Like,
if you want to become a drinker and a smoker, watch Mad Men.
Oh my God. It's actually, surprisingly enough, I watched it when I wasn't drinking and I didn't have the sense like, oh my God, I need a shot of booze to watch this show. Yep. But it is interesting that, how much people drank in the business environment. Mm-hmm. And maybe perhaps your dad could speak to
I think
this,
so.
Because he was in insurance.
Yeah, because it's a similar industry, insurance and advertising in that way. You've got clients and obviously it's not as glamorous.
But the fact that you always had booze in your office.
Yeah, like a bar.
That was just kind of coming to an end. Like, I mean, people may not know this about me, but I worked for the Toronto Public Library my whole career. And not that we drank, but we did drink. I mean, certain jobs that I had, Fridays was always buy a couple of bottles of wine and, sit. And if you weren't working basically facing the public, you're in the back room and having a glass of wine. The thought of that now is ludicrous. Yeah. Would never happen in that industry. Industry that you were in, maybe a little bit more.
Liquid lunches, we used to call them.
Oh yeah,
sometimes you didn't go back to the office because you were.
But it was acceptable.
Yeah, it was, and then it started. Like when I joined the industry over 25 years ago, it was still pretty prevalent, but over that period of time, it started decreasing. Like you started getting less lunchtime drinking or especially like multiple bottles of wine being ordered. But it, I think in two, when I first started in the industry, drinking was a bit of a badge of honor. Being seen as someone who could drink a lot and not show the effects of alcohol. Thankfully, and sort of leading back to me bringing this up was, I really started to look at the health aspects of drinking, not just being addicted to something, but the chemical that alcohol is, and what that does to your body or can do to your body. I mean, some of the people I've worked with, or maybe a little bit more toward my dad's generation, these guys, many of them have died. They've passed away in their sort of late 60s, early 70s, or have since retired, and God only knows what they're doing now. But thankfully that is not the way it is today. Not at all.
No, I just think that there's generally a more movement towards being healthy. It's like cigarettes. Cigarettes started first in the sense people started giving up smoking. I think alcohol is, gaining momentum. That's my sort of impression. Mm-hmm. Now, interesting thing about we talking about drinking on the job. I was just reading. I'm a real fan of the '60s series Bewitched. Okay, yeah. And there's a lot of trivia about that show because it had a lot of
how many Darrens were there?
Two. And the poor guy that basically was the first Darren, he had to give it up because he had such a severe back injury that they had to literally wheel him around on the set because he could. Like, you can apparently now, if you're savvy, you can see when you watch the episodes that he's always sitting down or he's reclined, and then he finally couldn't continue because he had a severe back injury. But the one thing I just read, and it's one of those internet trivia sites that I'm not sure if it's true, but it would make sense, is they were all actually fairly heavy drinkers of the main cast.
Yeah.
And if you notice in the show, if you know the show, they're always, let's have a martini. Samantha's always serving Darren a martini when he comes home, and then they're having a drink. And then Dora had a certain way she liked her martini made, and all that stuff. The alcohol was real.
Wow, really?
I know. When we think of that now, we just like impossible. But yeah, apparently, and it just makes total sense. I just don't think that people thought twice. Certainly my family background, my parents both were not big drinkers. My father liked his brandy once a day, one shot. Maybe a beer at the cottage, very rarely. But the remainder of the family, there was a lot of drinking going on. My mother's side, all of her brothers and sisters were huge drunks, huge. And I remember there's always alcohol everywhere, always. And, growing up, I mean, I didn't think, if I wanted to try alcohol, I just had to ask my parents. And they said, as long as you do it in front of us, you can do it.
I've changed my whole tune on that since giving up booze almost May 1st. April 30th.
I think that's great. I think you really, really should be. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think that's a real accomplishment. I don't think you certainly weren't throwing it back the way I like to do it. But I think that's a huge, huge accomplishment. You recognize something that you wanted to change, and you're sticking with it.
Well, thank you.
And even if you do go back to the occasional glass of wine or whatever, I wouldn't imagine you'll ever go back to swilling it back like you did in your insurance days.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I'm hesitant to even bring it back on a very limited basis, because I really feel like I don't know that I can just go. Not that like you said, not that I was going nuts and drinking crazy amounts, but so I would say I was already drinking it in moderation. I would have the odd bingey kind of time if I went on a guy's trip somewhere or holidays sometimes, but I'm worried. I don't think that I can go back to having beer or wine or any alcohol without worry that it's just going to go back to the way it was. And I don't want it to be the way it was, even though it wasn't terrible. Yeah. But I still enjoy the fact that I haven't had a hangover in 5 months. I never have to worry about when I'm going somewhere if I'm able to drive, the money I'm saving, the health benefits I'm getting. Some of which, again, if I was a heavier drinker, I might have been more conscious of changes. Like, wow, I have so much more energy, which I don't feel like I gained a ton of energy from not drinking anymore. I think I get better sleeps probably than I used to. But I guess if you were probably the heavier a drinker you were, the more benefits you feel when you stop.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair statement. And, like I said, just getting back to, I think, world alcohol consumption is dropping, and a lot of people are giving it a shot, trying it out and seeing if it works for them.
Well, there is the sober
And
curious movement. I forget whether we've talked
yeah,
about it on this show or not, but
I've heard of it.
that where I first read about it was just that a lot of younger people are not drinking as much, that they're going to concerts. There's what they sell at concerts now. Booze used to be a big part of it. Apparently, it's not as big a part of a concert, like, concession sales as it used to be.
Well, yeah, but on the other hand, go on the subway on a Saturday night in Toronto, and you see these young girls in their high heels and,
Yeah.
going down to, I almost said REM, and I'm thinking, holy, Ed, you're really dating
Taylor
yourself.
Swift, although she's
or
never
wherever
been
wherever the fuck these young people go to now, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see real drinking. Because one of the things that I've seen are these girls that, and I don't mean to just pick on women, but I just notice it more, that they do this thing, what they call power drinking, where they'll drink a half a bottle of vodka with their friends or more. Then they'll go out to the clubs, and then they don't buy the alcohol at the clubs because it's expensive.
Right.
And, but they're plastered by the time they get there.
Yeah, we used to call that putting a primer on, where you would
a primer. Oh yeah, I never did it. I don't recall. I don't really think I was a big club boy either. But but yeah. Anyways,
well, let's move into what we're watching, listening to, reading. You've got some a show or two on the go that you want to talk about.
I do. But can I actually just refresh my tea?
You may. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And plus there's something wrong with my, you'll cut this all out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cause there's something wrong with my charger on my.
Uh-oh. We might lose you.
Well, I haven't been able, let's see. Is it working now? Okay. No, I think it's this chart. Oh, there we go. There we go. I think we're good. Why do you have those things on your head?
They've been on my head the whole time.
Oh, okay.
You didn't notice that?
Maybe
They're
I
called
should
headphones.
No, I didn't notice them at all. It's really funny. So what was Annetta yelling at Eric about?
Well, he had to go to his math tutor.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't so happy because it's Thanksgiving Monday here, which is a holiday. And he says, why am I going to tutoring on a holiday?
Well, I have to be honest. If my parents sent me to a math tutor any day of the week, I'd probably jump out the window. So,
yeah.
But that's the way it goes. But it's the fact that, at least he's got it. I'm trying to think, did I ever have a tutor for anything? No.
I had a math tutor a bit.
I had terrible trouble with math, and I had terrible trouble, unfortunately, with French. And I regret the French so much because, I was just in Montreal last week, right? And it's just, you're just sort of there. And then, Mark's switching back and forth every 10 seconds. And, and you're just feel like the boob on the side, that just, can't participate, so to speak. Made me feel kind of like you should have stuck with it.
Do you think part of it's the way we were taught was flawed? Or we just weren't in the headspace to really appreciate
I wasn't in the headspace. I had a good French teacher in grade 7 and 8. I liked her. And then I was into it. And then I didn't have such a great French teacher in grade 9. And then I dropped it immediately. But it was very fashionable at that time to drop French because of what was going on with Quebec.
Oh.
So it was just.
Yeah, you're about 10 years older? No.
Yeah, well, 1980, the separation crisis was really heating up.
How old are you now?
57.
Okay, so you're six.
Can you
6
believe
years
it?
older than me.
Yeah.
57. 60's coming. Yay!
It'll 57. There's 3 more years, but
Getting old is a privilege.
I think I agree with you.
So what are you watching?
I was going to say. Oh, okay. What I'm watching? I'm watching 2 things right now, and both of them. One of them has been around for a long time, and it was only pointed out to me, and I started watching it, and then I had multiple seasons to catch up because, it's still going strong. My understanding it's going to be, or it already is, the longest running sitcom in television history.
So wait, before you say it, can I guess it?
Well, I was very surprised what it surpassed. And
You're not counting The Simpsons, right?
No, The Simpsons is an animated series, so it's a different.
And when did this show end?
It didn't. It's still going.
It's the longest running sitcom?
It's the longest running sitcom in television history, I believe, but don't quote me on it. I believe
How many years is that?
18.
Oh,
I think 18 or
I'm
17.
at a loss. Will it be like shocking when you tell me what it is?
Well, I had heard of it, kind of. People had said, "Oh, this show you should," and I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." I don't need. But then when I started watching it, I just became immediately obsessed. Now, apparently, I'm at season 10 right now. Okay, and
Oh, I know what it is.
it apparently starts to disintegrate. It's not as good. That's what people who are longtime fans of the show.
I cheated. I looked it up, but I think I know what it is.
What is it?
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yes, it's an absolute work of art. Like the four principals, joined by Danny DeVito. I mean, I always respected Danny DeVito as an actor.
Yep.
I just recently saw a clip of him in Cuckoo's Nest.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea he had hair at one point. He was quite cherubic. Like he was actually quite cute, little boy cute.
I remember him in One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest.
That's what I meant. He's in that. Yeah. But now, but anyways, he joined the cast very near the beginning, but I don't think to the second season or third season. Anyways, each of the four principals are just, in my opinion, comic geniuses. And that's because they don't do anything other than say the lines. They don't try to make something funny. They don't try to add anything. And the situations are just normal situations of a bunch of boobs running a bar, and they don't have a huge amount of guest people come in. They do, but not giant amounts. It's mainly the four of them, and
okay.
I adore it. I just absolutely adore it, and it's got the best theme song of any show I've ever watched.
Really? I might have to play it as an outtake or out.
Oh yeah, play it. It's very well. It'll stick in your head, and then you can't get it out.
Okay,
you got to be careful.
All right, well that's good to know. By the way, have you ever watched Portlandia?
No,
I think they're sort of similar.
I'm always looking for TV programs to start.
Yeah, Portlandia is quite quirky. Portland's kind of a quirky place, and that guy is it Fred Armistead. Do you know Fred Armistead?
Oh yeah, he's in Big Mouth. Like he's a voice in Big Mouth.
Right, Fred Armisen. Fred Armisen.
Yeah, I think he's actually been in Philadelphia as well as a guest.
Right. I haven't I've only seen a couple episodes of It's Sunny in Philadelphia, and I could be totally wrong that it's nothing like Portlandia, but there's a certain. It seems to me like there's a stylishness that they're comparably the same, but now when you say that certain actors cross over, it kind of makes sense. Okay, well I've got a quick one. So,
well, did you want me to say my second one, or do you want to say?
I'll say one, and then you can. So, Operation Mincemeat.
Never heard of it.
It's a movie. It was my brother-in-law mentioned it to me over Thanksgiving.
Which one?
John. Yeah, we don't say last names.
The pilot.
The pilot, yes.
With the blue eyes.
He doesn't have blue eyes.
I know. Well, at your wedding, he did.
Right, I'm sure. No, he didn't.
And the blonde hair.
Yeah, light blonde. It's kind of darkening now. But he recommended this movie, Operation Mincemeat. It was a World War II thing that the British did, where they had a corpse that they planted a whole bunch of information on, so that it would be discovered by the Germans, and that the Germans would. Use the information they found on this body that washed up on shore, that it was going to indicate where the Americans or where the Allies were going to attack next, like to try to not attack, but to, there was Normandy, this was either Sicily or Greece is where Hitler thought they were going to attack, and the whole idea was to trick the Germans so they would redeploy their forces in a different place. And I thought it was a pretty good movie. It really took forever to get to the part where the body actually gets discovered. It's Colin Firth is the main actor, very good actor, obviously. It's good acting. I struggled. I found it was a little slow. So I don't necessarily recommend the movie. That's not why I mentioned it. It's just more like that's just happened to be what I watched recently. So it's good. My wife liked it, but I just found it a little bit slow. But still, thanks for the reco, John.
Yeah, John, pilot
John, brown eyes,
blue eyes.
So what's your other one? We have to go soon. What's the other movie or show you're watching?
Well, it actually started out as a movie. and someone had recommended it to me, and I can't remember who. And the movie came out of New Zealand, and it was it was a mockumentary.
Okay.
And so, and it was a mockumentary about vampires.
Oh, you love vampires.
So I watched the movie, and I thought the movie was brilliant.
What was it?
And then, it's called What We Do in the Shadows, which is the movie version.
Yep.
And one of the principal actors is a producer on the TV series that was subsequently developed and then all filmed in Toronto, but set on Staten Island. And I just stumbled across that too. And it's the kind of thing, it's so exquisitely done. And I always used to say, if you want good humor and to set up a good joke, you have to count to 9. But if you say 10, or the actor says 10, or the situation says 10, it falls apart. The audience has to say 10. Okay? That's what I've always thought is a good formula. And I'll be watching this thing, and literally something will happen, and I will be weeping with laughter. Like, it's just that kind of thing. And primarily British cast.
Is it meant to be a humor? It's a mockumentary?
Oh, yeah. It's a funny, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's funny. And everybody has their favorite. Like, the fan pages are completely off the rails. Like, people, getting characters tattooed all over their bodies and dressing up. I mean, Halloween, I'm sure, is going to be, every single cast member from the show is going to be a primary costume for most people. But yeah, I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
and
it's a really
funny
new.
thing,
No, it's not.
It's not new.
2019,
No,
it says here. Yeah,
it's in its 5th season, and they just finished.
Yeah.
And I believe they're renewed for 2 more.
There's a 6th season's already confirmed, and the 5th season premiered on the 13th of July, 2023. So it just came out.
Yeah, it's already over.
Right.
Well, you just binge it. You can do it practically in a weekend.
And what is it on? What show or what network? Or?
It's on Disney Plus, or Hulu in the US. Okay. But just a funny little interesting note is that I was ranting and raving about the show, and one of our mutual friends who works in the film and television industry, and he's a pyrotechnic.
We can share it. It's Mike. Mike's been on the show.
Yeah, it's Mike. So Mike looked at me. I'm going, I love the show, and blah, 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 blah. And I would just, And Mike goes, well, Ed, you should have just told me. I worked on that show. You could have come to the set. And I thought, oh my God, I would have had to be restrained. But highly recommended, not for the kiddies.
Right.
It's just so
There's some,
well done.
Material in it that's a little too mature.
Oh, the whole show's mature.
Right.
I think your kids could probably watch it because they're of the age now. If they want to see anything, they just go on the internet and watch it, right? Let's face it.
Right.
Can you imagine? That's a show. Can you imagine basically what we would have been like as 13-year-old boys with access to the internet?
Well, on that note,
where's your kid? Bring him in here. Let's find out.
He's at his math tutoring class.
But let's look at his browser history and have a look at what he's. That'll be interesting.
TikTok videos.
Yeah, TikTok. God. I don't get TikTok.
Drives me crazy, Ed. It drives me crazy.
Why?
I feel like their minds are being poisoned by these 15-second snippets of videos. Flip to the next thing.
But they're not even interesting. Do you ever watch any of them?
Not really. I don't want to.
There's nothing but a bunch of chicks jumping around in their brasiers.
Well, I haven't really seen that. I've seen just silly things like, and Facebook now has these sorts of shorts that you can kind of get locked into.
Yeah, Facebook, yeah.
Reels or whatever. I don't know what they're called, but
the Reels.
Hey, before we go, it's Thanksgiving Monday. It's cloudy, and I just want to kind of loop back. I appreciate you doing this today because I said, I just had this hankering to do an episode, and Paul wasn't around. Salim and Justin are in Japan and sleeping right now. And so, yeah, and it's just I really appreciate that you, when I asked if you were interested, you said, yes. What time? Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Well, I had the day free. I mean, I'm supposed to be watching a video for my course I'm taking, but that just means that I don't have to. But yeah.
But good. Thanks for doing this.
You're welcome.
All right. See you later.
Okay. Is it over?